way we're able to do it. Our goal has never been to be a 100 agent team. I want my day-to-day to always be sort of what mine is, and I don't want to become a manager of people. So all of these things are sort of how we work. And so yeah, TalkCondo today is an online portal for new condos. We get leads from Hamilton on one end and all the way east to Ajax, Pickering, and everything in between. So we've really seen the site grow. We've grown with it, and so we're excited to have a good discussion with Kevin. I'm excited to learn from Kevin, actually. So,
and Kevin, off to you.
Yeah, I think what is going to be fascinating to me over the next hour is the areas that Roy and I overlap strongly, and then the different angles that we come in and why. And so I think that's one clarity to add before we dive into some of the specific questions is that my company works with builders and developers who have internal teams and will work with agents, certainly, but they have their own inside sales teams that are on salary for them. They have their own in-house sales teams that are also on salary. So those are going to be some differences. Our business and the builders we work with, the mix is probably 5 to 10% condo, another 15 to 20% townhomes and multifamily, and then the balance single family traditional suburban neighborhoods. So that's also going to be part of the distinctions there. But I love what Roy just said in that people have been arguing for the last, since the internet started, what percentage of sales have come from the internet? And about 7 years ago, that answer it was irrelevant. 100% of people were influenced by the internet, whether or not they themselves became a lead through an online form or submitting information to a portal. They were heavily influenced by everyone else around them in their life who was using those portals to do their own research to help their friend, coworker, family member go through the process of shopping for a home. So just drop all the excuses, stop looking for stats to try to convince everyone else about this being important, and just essentially use Roy's quote of 100% come from this source. And that's why it deserves the time and attention on a webinar like this, for sure.
Awesome. Again, thank you so much for being on the show, guys. To everybody listening, just a reminder that feel free to use the chat down below. Let us know if you have any questions. We'll bring them up or try and bring up some of them. But really, I'd love to dig into your guys' questions. But start it off, Kevin, I'm going to ask you, what's the biggest mistake you see people make when dealing with digital leads and online leads?
Yeah, and this is going to sound very strange, but it's the idea that quantity is the most important metric. And instead of understanding that you have to have a balance, almost on anything, right? There's a continuum that you're making trade-offs all the time. And especially the greater the market condition, the more that it is okay to shift towards higher quality, because the volume can become oppressive. And the number of inside sales or online sales people over the last year who have gotten out of the business due to stress and having too much to overcome, and regardless of any amount of automation or systems around them, when you have 1,100 leads coming in to a single person via the phone in a short period of time, even if the company says it's okay, you can take a little more time, the customer themselves on the other end, which is there's a funny YouTube video saying about I am not a lead. Like, don't call me a lead, don't call me a contact. I'm a human being who wants information on a home. And so regardless of the company saying, take time off, take a time, let it go to voicemail, use some automation to help, the consumers are relentless. And so what you want to find always is the right balance between quantity and quality. And kind of along with that is, if you're using tactics, specifically things like Facebook lead ads that drive people straight from seeing one image and 2 or 3 lines of text to I'm now a lead in your system, please tell me more, versus letting them go to a place like Roy's site or BuzzBuzz, or seeing the more content they can see up front. Again, this is a sliding scale that will adjust during different market conditions, but the more pictures you can let them see, the more pricing you can make transparent, the more settings up front in terms of timing that you can deliver and expectation setting, the better. The crazy example of this is there's a builder in Austin, Texas, who for a week, they sold out of all the homes in a phase. And so the marketer took it upon themselves to just put temporarily sold out as the big banner all over the website, just temporarily sold out. There was a new phase coming, but they didn't talk about it. No mention of it whatsoever. So To the consumer, it just looked like this was a community that was no longer available. And they still got 30 leads submitted just from their website from organic traffic in 1 week, with the expectation setting of temporarily sold out. And so those two things together of being overly concerned on just the quantity without really understanding how many of those are responding to your team versus staying dark, how long do they stay dark, and how you're handling them.
Let me ask you this, kind of a bit of a follow-up before we get to Roy, but again, I think there's a lot of people listening on the resale side, but I think there's a lot of similarities between resale and new construction when it comes to leads. We constantly hear at BuzzBuzzHome, like we hear from builders, like don't show floor plans, don't show, like we just want to show the bare minimum. And at BuzzBuzzHome, our goal is always to show the most possible information, floor plans, pricing, everything, because we believe that the quality of lead is way better if people have a full set of information. So how do you deal with your clients? I think it's the same for resale. Like how much information do you show on a listing or show on your website? How do you explain that to your clients, being builders or clients who are, realtors showing a home, on how much information they should show and how it's beneficial to show one set of information or another?
Yeah, the first thing is real quick on the floor plan side. I mean, floor plans were something that builders had exclusively to their advantage for decades, and now not so much anymore, right? Everyone is touting the fact that we're going to automate your floor plans from a 3D tour or from images taken on an existing home, and that's a huge opportunity and showcases that consumers have always wanted to see floor plans even on existing homes. We just didn't do them because they weren't easy to do until recently. But there's an entire channel that does nothing but 24/7 versions of the same story over and over again in terms of the home buying process. House Hunters and House Hunters International. It's my favorite thing to watch on Friday night and to play the guessing game of which one they're going to pick. But the reason that's always on when someone's shopping for a home is because of the obsessive nature. And so when you're trying to match that obsessive nature, if they don't find, I've researched and done a lot of market research with folks and say, okay, which platforms did you use? And I think, Matt, even when we've talked before, there are people who have used BuzzBuzz exclusively or added it to their new home shopping process because they found that there was 2 additional pictures on your platform than there was on Zillow or Realtor or other places. And so someone will install an app or go to a different platform and restart their entire search again just because there might be 1 or 2 more photos. Like it's extremely compelling. There's no lack of content that can be there. And that content also drives momentum over time. So ads, you turn those off, momentum dries up. But the content will continue to serve you and can be repurposed and reused over and over and over again. So from a long-term perspective, it's also better to have that additional content to build things up. The last thing before we turn it over to Roy too on this question is there is a big difference between new construction and resale, or from an agent versus builder perspective, in that as a builder, I probably only have a handful of options for that consumer. So when I say quantity and quality, builders, in-house builders are going to veer more towards the quality because I only have a certain number of dots on the map that I can send them to. Whereas someone who can go to multiple projects on that continuum, it's probably more likely that you're going to swing towards the quantity because you can take them where the best fit is for them, and you have more of that flexibility as a broker or an agent.
Awesome, thank you. And Roy, off to you. I'm kind of curious about this on 2 sides. One, what do you see as the biggest mistake people are making with dealing with leads? And on the other side of that is, what's a mistake that you made early on that you corrected so that you could handle your leads better?
I think the biggest mistake that I see is this idea of a bad lead. I think we hear it all the time that they didn't respond right away or they didn't convert right away, and immediately that lead is now a bad lead. We have so many examples of buyers. We've actually got one right now in the 10-day cooling off period. They signed up on our website in 2015. We've never heard from them. They haven't interacted with the email respond, and all of a sudden they see something that the time is right now. It's just about delivering ongoing communication, ongoing education. That piece of the puzzle is so important. It's not about that they sign up today and they're going to buy tomorrow. That's not the case. It's about having that process where over time you're always delivering information, and we hear it from people all the time. We've been getting your emails for years. thank you for blah, 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 blah. So it's that idea of always going back to the database and giving value.
1000%. I think there's no such thing as a bad lead. There's only bad marketing. And so, you know, and what I mean by that, right, is I could say, enter your email address here and get $1,000 gift card, chance to win $1,000 gift card. That's bad marketing. But if you've got a portal or a site that's dedicated to a specific topic, has a good amount of content, and then they submit, I completely agree. No such thing as a bad lead.
I think another thing that Kevin sort of touched on, if the portal idea. So where we are a little bit interesting is that I mentioned we've had TalkCondo for 10 years. The TalkCondo that started 10 years ago and the TalkCondo of today are two completely different things. And the benefit of that to us is that we sort of see the quality of lead based on the quality of the website along the way. So when we started, it was just a blog. That's where TalkCondo come from, because we were talking about condos. It was a blog and we'd write about different things. And then over time, it's become more of an online portal where we do share. First, it was just project pages. You know, this is 123condos.com. And then there would just be information on that project without floor plans, without pricing. Over the last 3 or 4 years, we've really delved into that floor plan and pricing avenue, which is a ton of work. And, you know, Matt does it better than anybody. And it's, but again, the more information that you put out there, relevant to what they're looking for, the quality of the lead will increase.
Do you ever clean up your lead database, your database, or is it just constantly going? If there's no such thing as bad lead, I mean, it doesn't cost really anything to keep as many leads as you've collected over the years, or do you try and clean it up every now and then so you're not wasting time?
No, I mean, you know, if they tell us they no longer want to hear from us, we will opt them out, or they will opt them out themselves. But we're not going in and, like I said, we've got so many examples of people from years ago that we've never heard of. Like I said, we've got one deal happening right now. I think firms up tomorrow. And you know, when I look at, okay, where was the original lead source? It's for something completely different than what they ended up buying. That's another thing. People, especially in our space, people sign up for something completely opposite of what they may end up buying. And that happens, I would say, way more often than not.
Yeah, I'll echo that for sure. And again, not as much condos, single family more so, but 1/3 of the leads that come in for home builders, especially in the United States, come from a source that is not the community they end up becoming an appointment or a sale for. So it is 1/3 of the time. And that's, as a marketer, you got to remember that, because it'll drive you crazy. You're like, I'm trying to send the traffic to this one community, this one project. So you're spending your resources for that. And 1/3 of those resources are essentially being diverted to another community that isn't on the list you're trying to draw that attention to. And there's nothing you can do about it, because if you try to restrict that too much, the consumer just bucks you off the horse and says, I don't like what you're trying to guide me down and trap me here. I want to see more options.
Yeah, and I think the sort of takeaway for us there, and has always been, is that if somebody is signing up for Oakville condos, they may buy Scarborough condo or Vaughan condo or downtown Toronto condo, right? And for us, what does that mean? That means that we need to have the knowledge of all these different products, because, you know, if they sign up here, but, you know, that doesn't quite line up with what you're looking for, but that's when the expertise comes in, and being able to have those different conversations. So,
and that also goes into the like, those aren't my buyers. It's an echo of that's a bad lead, but I don't want those people from that side of town. You're like, no, you want all the people from everywhere.
So a lot of what we're talking about right now is leads that are already in your database and you know, constantly over time working them and nurturing them. What about a lead that comes in? Like, Roy, while we're having this talk, I know you've got a team, but while we're having this talk, someone emails you, they're interested in purchasing at 8 Wellesley.
Sold out.
How long? What's your process? Do you, like, you know, I always tell people you need to respond to the lead within 5 minutes.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on timing on these leads and how to respond quickly?
I think it's very, very important. So we have a pretty hefty automation system that happens. So if you go on TalkCondo and you sign up for 8 Wellesley, our job as marketers is to sort of anticipate what that person is actually looking for. So right now on TalkCondo, we have 3,000 condo buildings. Every single condo building has some kind of unique autoresponder. So if you sign up for 8 Wellesley, you're going to get an autoresponder that says you signed up for 8 Wellesley. Our understanding is that you want more information on 8 Wellesley. So here is that information. They will get the latest price list, the latest floor plans, the latest brochure, the latest, all the latest information, along with information on how to get in touch with somebody from our team or move the ball forward. They will also receive further touch points over the next few days. They're all autoresponders. So that's a project that's already active. Projects that are not yet active, again, it's anticipating what they're looking for. So there's a condo launching next week. It's Grand Festival in Vaughan. Somebody who's registering for a project that is not yet available, what are they most likely looking for? They're looking for, what do we know about the project? Here are the suite sizes that we're anticipating. Here's the launch date. Here is the expected prices. And then again, here's how you contact us for more information. With the volume of leads that we have, we are not aggressive on the phones. We are very aggressive on our automation systems and staying in touch with the people. We recognize it's important to get information to them quickly and consistently. So we have those different touch points. The other thing that I think is important to note is that with automation, I think a touch point is, the traditional touch point is call them, text them, or email them, all this stuff. But I think it's important to have a bit more of a comprehensive touch point system. I think with Facebook Pixels and Google Pixels, once they're on your site, you can set up ways of tracking them around the internet. So they keep seeing you once they've registered on your site. So I think number one, getting them the information as soon as humanly possible, whether that's calling them to give them the information or automating it so that they get anticipating what they're looking for and delivering that to them. And then also that consistency going forward. For us, our goal is for that person, the registrant, to put their hand up a second time and say, you know what, I've registered already. That's hand up number one. We want to see a second hand up saying, you know what, we want to talk to you. And that's how we then filter from the sort of big list down to a more manageable list. And then the other people, if they're not interacting with us, they'll keep getting our emails. In the first email as well is setting expectations. You signed up for this project, but just so you know, we will also be contacting you about this, and this. And they give us that permission when they register as well. So that's very important. So it's sort of this more comprehensive idea. We want to get them to follow us on our social. So in one of the emails, we do behind the scenes on our Instagram and watch as we talk to builders or whatever that is that you do it. The idea that phoning them is the touch point, I think, is not as relevant for us, at least. It's more of a comprehensive idea.
What do you think, Kevin? I know personally, I love personal touches. I'm a big believer in when I send through a lead on something, and I love getting a personal response. And I think what Roy's talking about is very different because of the quantity and really whittling it down until that personal touch. What's your thoughts on the touch and how to respond that first time?
Well, I just have one question for Roy, because I agree with so much of what he said, but what is so different in experience on our end is that the consumers, their initial response for them, like 2 or 3 years ago, the number one source of leads coming in was a form completion of some type or a chat, but essentially on the site, capturing the data, goes into a CRM, autoresponders can go. In today's world in the US, more than 3/4 of the leads are coming in from either text message or a direct phone call. The phone call volume is through the roof. And so I'm just curious if that's just different in your experience, or if you have a different automation flow that you're using for inbound calls to kind of help that same.
If you go on my website and can find a phone number,
that's what I figured. That's what I figured. So that's smart.
It's there somewhere, but
that's the way to control it. So I think that's a big picture. I just have to reiterate this point that what the Greater Toronto area has experienced is what the entire United States is now experiencing. Like every market, every state, which is not normal and not historically accurate. So the need for automation is often driven by an inability. In fact, that's kind of one of the things when I talk to people who have an existing program that's heavily existing on automation, is you're starting with a premise of, I could never respond to all the people who are interested in a personal way. And that's not right or wrong. That's the decision that was made when that program started. Our philosophy is that we want to build a system that can scale to whatever lead demand is there. A little bit more of an Amazon-like approach. So Amazon is a highly technical, highly automated. They've automated the things they can that provide lower value, like adding things into a box, and then human beings do what they need to do from there. That's more of our approach. And so, in the pandemic, Amazon hired, I think, 100,000 employees in like 60 days in the United States because they had to scale up to meet that demand. And that's driven by our general belief that speed is the most important factor. When the phone rings, you need to answer it. So that reduces the need for additional back and forth. But ironically, the second thing that we see traditionally, and again, this is almost not possible with Roy's setup in terms of representing multiple brands, multiple companies, multiple developers. But from our end, when someone finally, we say, swirls the red wine around and says, okay, I'm about to become a lead, I'm about to get spammed, I'm about to get all this stuff coming back to me, they usually don't just hit it on a single builder site. They submit the one lead, and then it's like something flipped in their mind, and now they're going to go to 5 other builders and fill out the same form in the next 20 minutes because they've crossed that line. And okay, I gave my information to one company, let's just give it to the top 5 and see what happens. And so speed is number one, but ironically, number 2 is personalization, to cut through the clutter of everyone who's going to just send auto responses. And so we do a survey every year where we send out anywhere from 50 to 200 leads out, look at the responses. And one year what we looked at and spent a lot more time was the quality of the response. And what we found is there's level 1 of like essentially an auto response or a confirmation that we got you. And exactly what Roy described, those are the folks who are taking the double opt-in method of like, could you just prove to us one more time that you're worthy of the human beings to get in touch? And again, in a hyper market condition, that might be necessary. Level 2 was some type of personal account of not just you asked for information on this community, but you referenced that you were looking for 3-bedroom or 4-bedroom homes, something that was personalized. The third one was adding emotion to it, saying, and the standouts there were things like, I went through a similar process as you did about 2 years ago, or I know someone who is relocating from this place, some type of personal emotion storytelling aspect that, like, you listen to those voicemails versus someone who would call you back and say, hey, Matt, thanks for asking for more information about our 2,000 square foot condo project with 3 bedrooms and an amazing amenity center versus, holy cow, Matt, yeah, you're going to be moving from Toronto to Columbus, Ohio. That's going to be a big move. What are you thinking about? I'm excited to help. It's just completely different. And so to cut through the clutter of kind of that level 1 follow-up, personalization is ironically the thing that we teach our builder partners to slow down and add that 1 to 2 sentences that's going to make you stand out, because that's your first opportunity to create an ongoing. Once that relationship starts, it's chips and salsa, peanut butter and jelly. It's hard for either side to stop it unless the customer decides to stop it. The questions in the back and forth continue, and hopefully you're progressing towards an appointment. But that's the thing that I think a lot of people don't expect, is that personalization, as long as you can scale it, is that next secret weapon after speed.
Kind of regarding that, and this is a question that just came out, and I think this is more of a question for Roy. Is there a risk of losing a lead by giving them too much info without their commitment before getting them to sign a BRA?
Well, we don't sign BRAs because we're in the new construction. It's a little bit of a different system, but I mean, I think there's you talk to 5 different people here, and you're going to get 5 different answers. We made a very big decision a few years ago to effectively give all the information on the website that people would otherwise opt in for. And we did that, and it goes back to quality. If you're signing up on a page that has no information, then versus somebody who's already absorbed that information and knows what they want, and then they're contacting you, it's just about improving that quality. And it's the same discussion that you go around in circles. And I've had this discussion with a lot of other agents that don't give away as much as we do on the website. I believe that you get a better quality of lead when you give the information and you show you're selling based on expertise, as opposed to gatekeeping the data. As a side to that, and again, something that we've noticed is that the quality of lead is also different depending on where they sign up. We have different places that people can opt into our system. We have a general, I want to be an investor in condos, sign up here. And those are pretty good. They've sort of read the investor bit and they want to be an investor. They're not signing up for a specific project. And we put them pretty high in the list. If you're registering for a specific project that has no pricing, then that quality is much lower. If you're going next to a specific floor plan within a specific building that has pricing, that has all the information, the quality of that person is way, 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 way higher. If we do a lot of videos and, here's the reasons to invest. Like if you're coming through the video, again, higher because you've absorbed that content. So I think there's a lot to be said about how you come into the system, what it is that you saw before you come into the system. And like I said, that's why we went and we made a big commitment, huge commitment. It's very, very hard to keep up with floor plans and pricing and availability. It's very, very tough. But we did that because of that reason, because we felt that the people that come in after they've seen the information, it's just a better quality. And if you're relying on gatekeeping, the data as your sort of your point of differentiation, I think that can only get you so far. I think you really got to stand alone on expertise and your knowledge of what you're selling.
I can't comment because I'm not a realtor on the BRA side, but there's no doubt from our clients, we're told that the quality of leads coming out of BuzzBuzzHome is just far greater than anything because we give all that information. People come out, and again, I think this could be used on your own, people's own websites or however they want to do it, but we find the more information we give, the more pricing we give, the more floor plans we give, the more up-to-date the information. I mean, we hire 35 people, it's their entire job, to just get this information. The better quality of information equals better leads. And I think exactly what Roy said from the realtor side, being able to convert those is really being an expert in the field and knowing your product more is important than getting people to sign an agreement. Kevin, I think that's a little bit out of your zone, but do you have anything
Thankfully,
to add?
yes.
We still have a lot more questions, but I want to kind of start with kind of a question that would normally be at the end, but for people that are here right now, if there's one major rule on dealing with online leads from this webinar, one major rule for people to take away, what would that rule be? And Kevin, I want to kind of go to you on that one.
So be fast, be personal with that initial response, and then be persistent with your presence. That's just a little quote that I would stick up on the wall. You can attribute to me, or I've looked, I can't find it anywhere else on the internet. I feel like I heard it from someone, but be persistent with your presence. And that just means you don't have to worry about what you are saying. To Roy's part, it is about being consistent, reaching out on a consistent basis. But everyone freaks out about, what do I say? I told them last time about the floor plans, and now I don't know what else to talk about. Just continue to talk about the fact that you're there to help them whenever they're ready and that you haven't forgotten about them. And so in that, if you're following along here, what I just said sounds an awful lot like something you could automate. And so that's where the older that lead goes, the more that you're going to want, in my opinion, be more comfortable throwing in more automation, even when you have the bandwidth, because you want that bandwidth to be able to be dedicated to fast and personal initial response and then automate from there.
Before we get into Roy answering that, what the main takeaway is, just a question on that persistence. We had a question from Robin Mitchell that says, how often do you follow up with your leads via phone call, text, or are you mainly letting them receive listings from your website until they reach out to you? Mm-hmm. So when do you kind of, I know with Roy's system, he's talking about an automated system, so I think it's very different. Mm-hmm. But if you're going the more personal route, how often do you reach out to somebody? When are you like, okay, I've already emailed this person like 100 times. I'm now.
Yeah, the general rule of thumb is still 7 to 9 touch points from a variety of sources: phone, text, email, video, email, etc. within the first 30 days. Now, the first 1 or 2 are going to be highly personalized. The next after that are going to be more general, can be more semi-automated messages, and then after that, once a month on a continual cadence. But I'll say this, and I think Roy's going to agree, someone who is highly responsive, highly motivated, it's okay to call them twice in one day. Or it's, you just can never take silence, like he said, as rejection. It just means that we live in a busy world. And so, but 7 to 9 touch points, we've heard forever when we work with folks in Canada, the initial reaction is, That's aggressive. So I'm really curious to hear Roy's take on just the cadence level too.
I don't track it to that. I'm not I don't say this many times in this many days. But one of the things that we do try and do is get down to text messaging as soon as humanly possible. We just find that's how people want to communicate now. There may be an initial phone call or to go through things, but so much of what we do now is through WhatsApp or iMessage or whatever it is. We want to get to texting as soon as humanly possible. It makes it easier to communicate. It makes it easier to keep a track of what's been said. And so much of our business now is done in those in that space. I think another thing is, again, just going back to this idea of identifying those people, is there's a lot of other tricks that we use to say, is this a good lead? Is it a bad lead? Is it one example that we love to use is we use an email tracker. So if a lead comes in, it's maybe the phone number's not right. We can't get hold of them on the phone. We'll send them an email with a couple of links in there that we want them to click. The email tracker will tell us he opened it within 1 minute and clicked the link within 10 seconds. That person is more likely to be more interested than someone who takes 6 days to open an email and another few days to click the link. So there's a lot of different ways, a lot of little different tips and tricks that we can use sort of scattered throughout to sort of identify these people more. I don't even remember the original question, Matt. Sorry, I just popped into my head and I wanted to share it. So
yeah.
So, Roy, to get back onto the most important thing that somebody can take away from today, like what would you say is like your number one rule that you think people need to start following or should take away from this?
I wish I could be original, but I think Kevin's respond quickly and be consistent is the rule. There's no, that if you want to work with people online, that is the rule. If you're not doing those two things, then you're off to a bad start from the beginning. For me, I mentioned it earlier. It's for us, with being as automated as we are, it is anticipating what they're asking for, and we don't get it right 100% of the time, but anticipating what they're looking for so that we can set that system up for them. And if you're not automated, then anticipate what they're looking for. If they're signing up for a condo project, they're most likely wanting more information on that, and making sure that they get what they're asking for as soon as possible in that initial touch point. And then again, consistency. And again, for us, that doesn't mean we're calling them every single day or texting them every single day. It could be this is a new offer. It could be this is a webinar that we're hosting. It could be this is how you, a variety of different things. Here's a new book that we wrote, whatever it is. It's about continuing to give information. So that would be speed, consistency.
Kevin, I think Roy was just talking about text messaging, and you mentioned, I think, like 3/4 of leads to U.S. home builders are via phone. Mm-hmm. You see the same interest in text messaging from leads as we're seeing in Canada?
Yeah, for sure. If anything, the only difference would be that we're trying to get a phone conversation via text, but text is a great entry point and initial conversation. But again, our main focus is to get everyone on the phone. And that's one of the trade-offs that, again, builders in the US are starting to realize we can't, we do have to hide our phone numbers in similar ways, or at least on certain pages. We're going to make sure, to Roy's point, we're only going to put our phone number on the pages that produce the highest quality type leads, and not on the home page, not on subcategory pages, but not until you get to a specific home of interest, is because that is kind of our secondary sourcing of, if you're interested enough to pick up the phone and call. Right now, home builders in the US average as high as 80% of those phone calls going to an on-site appointment. And so that's the number one quality. It's as quality as they come, so to speak, but texting is very close behind. And what's interesting is, even though Roy and I had the same answer, and a lot of people are like, well, that's, whatever it is, whatever your reaction is, everyone says that they do this, but they don't. I mean, Roy and I know we'll both shake our heads that most people will follow up twice and never again. And even our last survey we did, we found out that half of major corporations and brands were no longer doing any form of meaningful email follow-up from marketing. within a 1 week period after becoming a lead or a prospect in the system. Even in the timing of the pandemic where everyone knew that everything had to be done virtually and online, only 10% or so of home builders that we surveyed sent a phone, made more than one phone call, sent a text message, and sent more than 2 emails.
That's wild.
In a 30-day period. So everyone on the call probably is like, yeah, my company does that. We have someone who does that. Go sign yourself up as a lead on a different Gmail account and see what happens. Because
I tell that to my builder clients all the time. It's like I say, go submit a lead to your own website and see what happens. And builders are often
even right now, Matt. I mean, I get emails from everyone who sells real estate in the United States, pretty much, and not counting agents and brokers here, builders and developers. I can think quickly, and there's only 3 companies that consistently send me marketing communication. Only 3 out of, I mean, I work with 52 directly, and most of them aren't on that list either.
So what do you tell those clients?
Well, email's not dead. I think that's the other thing that you're hearing Roy and I both say is that is a great way to be persistent with your presence. It's not the end point, but it's a great way to continue to communicate that other people have given up on, much like mail in your mailbox is down. So is email from the real estate space in particular.
We live and die by our email database. Like that is still to this day our primary way of communicating with the database. And that is, if we shut that up tomorrow, I'm not saying we're out of business, but you know, we're not miles off. It's still very, very important.
We have a ton of questions that have come through. So I want to kind of jump to some of these questions. I mean, the one that keeps coming up, Roy, is for you. First brought up by Ara saying, Roy, who cut your hair? I mean, I think everyone's asking, what's up with the haircut?
So this was a hair trimming malfunction. It was supposed to be a little bit longer. My daughter accidentally zipped a part off, and then we just went for it.
Came back to some real questions. Although, Ara, thank you for that one. This is an interesting one. What do you guys find is the best CRM to use?
We have a love-hate relationship with our CRM. The one we use is a company called Infusionsoft. And Infusionsoft is both complex it allows us to do a lot of unique things, but it's almost too complex for. So we have it's a great program. I know for real estate, one of the very popular ones right now is Follow Up Boss. We hear a lot of success with that. It's not one we've used personally, but it's one that I know a lot of our colleagues and other people in the space use. But Infusionsoft is the one for us that it embeds into our website, and it lets us do all the sort of automation that we want to do.
In the new construction space, there's really only 3 players. Number 1 would be Lasso. I'm going to go in order of, I'm going to say simplicity, but simple isn't a bad word. Lasso is definitely number 1 in terms of overall adoption. Number 2 would be HubSpot, and number 3 would be Salesforce. HubSpot's kind of the sweet spot between the two. Can do a lot of complex things. Has a lot of built-in tools like scheduling and chat and other things. So you don't have to have additional programs to bolt on and integrate with the system. Lasso is the most easily used by on-site teams, but currently lacks some functionality that at scale might run into challenges with. But Salesforce, as I'm sure a lot of people here know, is just a multi-year, hundreds of thousands of dollar project that often requires a full-time employee or team member.
I was going to say the one problem with Salesforce is you need a team, full-time team monitoring it. Next question is from Pharrell. What are your thoughts on advertising the rebate kickback upfront versus on a case-by-case basis? I've seen some more aggressive 3% back lately, and wonder if this is a one-off or becoming a new trend. Roy, do you have any thoughts on that one?
I mean, we've never advertised kickbacks openly. I'm sure it generates a lot of leads. And look, it's not a space that we play in. It's not something that we promote, and I don't know the success of it. I can't say too much more without sticking my foot in my mouth. So
Oh, I can, because I'm not involved in this whatsoever, but it's not a good idea. You're commoditizing yourself, you're commoditizing your company. And when you lead with price as the only conversation point, then that's also likely where you're going to end. So in the suburban single family project, we always, people always had discounts and incentives, and they mostly ended around 2010, 2011 here, because it's just the starting point in the conversation. Whatever you're giving away from the beginning is not the end.
This is a question that came in, and this is one that I actually get a lot, again, because BuzzBuzzHome is 24/7. We can send out 1,000 leads before people wake up. What do you do if a lead comes, from the personalization side? Roy, yours is, I know, automated, so your answer is going to be a bit different. But if you're actually going the personalization route and a lead comes in at, this person used 9 p.m. as an example, but a lead comes in at 11 p.m. How are you supposed to deal with that? And we briefly touched upon the importance of timing. How do you actually respond to that in a timely manner?
Well, again, in the current market condition, you're going to say, just take a breath and catch it in the morning. But in a normal market, there's nothing wrong with a very short reply of, fantastic, Matt, I got your information. Our offices are currently closed, but we'll be back in touch with you in the morning. And again, does that sound like something that could be pretty closely automated from a hours on, hours off perspective? Yes. But that's one thing. Thankfully, the consumer, although I don't think we're going to, eventually we'll get here, but currently the consumer does not expect a personal response at 11 o'clock at night. However, again, in a normal market condition, if you want to blow that customer's mind, and this is kind of strange to me, but a lot of developers and builders, their first reaction is, that's setting up a terrible expectation that we're going to always be available to communicate with these people whenever they want to be communicated with. I think that's interesting. You must have been a terrible person to go on a first date with, because you probably said, just before we get going here, I want to let you know that I've got all this baggage in my past, and now let's have an enjoyable first date. You can always reset expectations as you go along through the process, but the number of stories that I've heard from people who, they almost do it for fun. Online salespeople and inside sales teams, it's almost too much fun to pass up in a normal market where you're not burnt out. To be like, I'm going to blow this person's mind, and just answer the phone when it rings at 9:30 at night.
There's nothing I love more than doing that exact same thing, especially when dealing with marketing companies and other sales company builders. Is I'll often get an email from a builder at 11 p.m. I love responding to them.
And
mind-blowing to them.
Personally, same thing. I mean, it'll be 9:30 at night on a Saturday, and someone will email me a question who I don't work with, and I'll respond back in 20 minutes, and they're like, holy crap, I didn't think I'd ever get a response, let alone. And what they don't know is that took me 2 seconds, and now I'm back to watching my movie. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, so on that, like, I will always respond to an email when I see the email, even if the response is, I cannot respond right now.
Yep.
That's, again, if that's the answer, then whatever I'm doing, if I've seen the email, you said it took me 2 seconds, took you 2 seconds to just, if I've seen it, I can reply, I can say, I'll be available in 30 minutes or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm. This question just came in. It's from Robin Mitchell. And Roy, I think this one's more for you. Do you, actually, you're automated, so maybe not, but do you find a lot of leads are annoyed when you call and they just wanted information and had to enter their info? So if you had to enter your info to get information, and then you end up contacting them again, maybe this actually does play in more to the automated side.
Yeah, I mean, because we sort of more into the double opt-in, we don't get that as much. So yeah, I'm the wrong person to answer for that. But dealing with annoyed people, again, are you bringing some expertise to that conversation?
Bingo. That's where I was gonna. It sounds like then what you're giving them is a generic response conversation after they've already given you. And that's the interesting thing. When does the sale start? And we've had to talk with a lot of people about this past year and a half, year especially, is from the prospect's perspective. No, they're not on contract with you yet, but they gave you valuable information, and they're expecting something of value in response. So if Roy's auto response was, thank you. Here's a link directly to the developer's site that you asked for more information about. And they've probably already been there and there wasn't enough information, or then that would be an antagonistic conversation. So you can't essentially create a farming system for inbound leads, but not be an expert on what you're trying to get those inbound leads to ask you about.
Here's another question. What is a better lead? An educated lead or an eager lead? Advice for new agents looking to dive into pre-con sales. So let's start with the first one. An educated lead or an eager lead? What do you guys think is a stronger, more qualified lead?
I think we're going to have different answers. Well, I'll just, from my perspective, again, an agent or a broker who can take someone to multiple locations, give me eager, because I'm going to have time to educate you after I make a connection and prove value. But from a builder's perspective, if I only have 2 projects in downtown Indianapolis, then I really need you to be educated, because if you're eager but you want to live in the suburbs, it's a waste of both of our time.
I'm trying to paint the picture of an eager but not educated buyer versus a educated but not eager buyer. And if I have to pick between the two, I want the eager but not educated, because we can educate. We don't know where they've got their education from. If they're coming in, it could be from other sources that don't line up. So eager with that are willing to be educated is definitely the answer.
Yep.
This is one for both of you. Maybe we'll start with Kevin, because you do so much training. Is there a script you find most beneficial when making cold calls or contacting cold leads? So what percentage of your consultants, your consultees, are really running off script, and what percentage of their time are they kind of ad-libbing?
So first, I would just say that I'm not aware of any do you convert builder or developer ever making a cold call. So just a reminder that anyone who's in your system by definition is not a cold call. If they're cold at all, it's because you've chosen to allow them to cool on your end, right? So we don't, and that's a hard thing for a lot of online salespeople or inside salespeople to get their head around, is they're used to coming from another position where they are just given a list of people who are cold, or they pulled from some archive somewhere. But these are all people who fairly recently asked for more information. And so again, that's the part about being persistent with your presence to someone who's already asked for help. But in terms of if you're trying to reach out to someone over the phone that you haven't seen a response from in 6 months, that's where you're going to create a segmented list, and you are going to, for that segmented list of 100 people that you're about to call, you're going to have a generally templated talking point that you're going to use, because most of those people you're not going to get to answer. You're going to get a lot of voicemails. So you're either going to pre-record that and hit the button to automatically leave the voicemail, or you're going to, but you have to have a general template idea. But that it's not so blind that you're just saying any random person that I pick up who's cold, I'm going to say the same thing. You're going to pull a segmented list of 100 or however many people you can call in the given time period that you have set aside to do that.
So here's actually a question about segmentation. This one's really, I think, dealing with the Southern Ontario, but it seems like it's actually really happening across North America. Since we're in a hyper market where projects are launching back to back, do you feel hesitant on bombarding your database with new projects almost daily, or do you segment your lists?
This is a tough one. We've gone back and forth on this a lot. I think what we have found is that as long as we truly believe the project to be a good project, and we will highlight why, I think that you can bombard, because that's what the expectation is of us. They want to be kept in the loop. We have what's called the Insiders Club, and they want to be kept in the loop of what the new launches are. So sometimes it's if we're not keeping them informed, are we doing our job? So I think if you're just sending them absolutely everything and not filtering that in some way, I think it can be problematic. But as long as it passes through our filter that we believe the people expect of us, then whether it's one project a month or one project a day, that really depends on the quality of what's out there.
Yeah.
I'd also like to kind of, before Kevin jumps in on that one, also mention that in the pre-construction world, especially for Southern Ontario right now, there's definitely a lot of demand.
Yeah.
But if you look back the last 6 or 7 years, there's next to no launches. I mean, this is not back to back. This is like, this season, there's been like 4 or 5 launches with, I remember back in, I think it was like 2016, in the fall alone, we had 90 launches in one season. And that's just for really the GTA. So what we're seeing now is, I would say definitely not bombardment. I mean, there's been a small handful of launches compared to a typical season.
Yeah. This question comes in many different forms, but they're all essentially the same question. It's very similar to how long should my video for YouTube or Instagram or Facebook be? Like, well, as long as it needs to be. I mean, when you no longer have something important to show or tell, you should shut up and end it. But if you have 15 minutes of amazing things, yeah, then go IGTV and go YouTube and tell the whole 15 minutes. Maybe you have it. So how many emails should I send? To Roy's point, you're the curator, you're the expert. And if it's something your team would want to know, then that's what they're entrusting you with, is they want to know what you feel is important enough for them to know. But so much of it is just looking at the data that comes back and the open rates and the click-through rates. And I mean, that's the only danger in not aggressively or making a very easy way for people to opt out, is you don't want a large list of people on an email list that you're sending, an email every week to, who only 10% are opening, because then the algorithms start to work against you. You get shoved in the promotion box and other places. So you do at times want to have a very direct, like, last year we kind of blew up our email list and said, like, if you don't click this button, you're probably not going to get another email from us. And it was overly aggressive than a builder or developer would be, for sure. But we want to make sure that our list is as healthy as possible. So the data will tell you when you need to start transitioning.
On that point, very quickly, we are equally mindful of clients telling us, we never heard about this opportunity from you, as we are of people saying you're sending us too much. So they're sort of the balancing act.
Yep. Exactly.
We're just coming up to the end. I'm going to try and go through a few more questions pretty quick, because we still have like 15 questions in the queue. But also just to note, for people asking questions, we're really trying to stay focused on lead fostering, not so much on just how to get into the pre-con game and what's the next hot project. So Roy, I'll start this one with you. How early are you fostering online leads for pre-con development projects, and what type of information are you providing to them? So, I mean, an example of this is, let's say, I'm sure on TalkCondo and on BuzzBuzzHome, I mean, once the permits get issued, not even permits get issued, we try to get them on once the planning really starts, but we don't really start pushing products or projects until it's kind of named. So Roy, what's your philosophy on that?
We have sort of tiers, right? We have, similar to you, once there's a name, that's when we can start pushing it. But usually we market a month out. So we're already sort of planning for next month's launches now. So the ones that we're actively selling now were most likely marketed a month ago. So we're always sort of playing a month in the future for the most part.
That's such a market-based dynamic, because that's where we are again now. Traditionally, and in my book, 90 to 120 days out is okay. But as the market gets to be greater, what you're battling against, and the reason you keep that window shorter, like 30 days, is when you get a point where it's impossible to filter the list down to a manageable size. Meaning, once you tell the list, well, you have to have a non-refundable deposit, and you still have 1,000 people interested in 20 units. Well, now what do we do? And so you're just trying to control the chaos, because in a really great market, you can't filter down the list small enough. It just becomes chaos.
Welcome to South Ontario.
Yeah.
Our builders literally do a hand-drawn sign that says lots for sale and be sold out before it even hits the ground. I think we've got time for one or two more. If someone says they were just looking and not buying, would you keep them as a lead? I think this one went to one of our earlier questions about everybody's a lead, but Roy, I'll let you stay on that one.
Yeah, I mean, we do it all the time, and again, it comes back to the same thing, education. And I think videos are a great point to that. Like, we do a lot of videos where we're always educating, and it's about it comes back to that automation. I can send videos to people all day long, and they can watch what we have to say and why we believe this is a good product or whatever it is, and it's just ongoing education until they tell us to opt out, leave us alone. we're gone, we will always continue to be in touch in some way.
Kevin,
Yeah.
this is going to be kind of the final question. Anything that you want to add to that?
Well, just respond with fantastic. We love to be involved in the looking process. That's often, part of the fun is, and co-shopping will continue to be a greater extent of how the future of this process works as more and more goes virtual. And we didn't even touch on this, but definitely the trend of a virtual 5 to 10 minute conversation happening with a representative from the builder or developer prior to an in-person appointment, because is it worth me getting in the car at this point or not, is becoming more commonplace, even as things open back up here. And so as that starts to happen, this idea of creating a virtual but real relationship with someone earlier on in the process is going to be, and then how do we communicate back and forth? As I'm just looking, how can Roy help me, and how can I help Roy understand more of what I'm looking at and what I'm interested in?
Yeah, I would just say, if I didn't have real life examples of exactly what I said earlier, where we haven't heard from people for years and years and years, they've told us we're not interested right now, we're just looking. It happens all the time. It could be 1 year gap, 3 year, 5 year gap that we've never heard from this person, and all of a sudden they see something they like, or they like what we're putting out there, and they can turn into a deal. There's no minimum, there's no maximum.
Amen.
Awesome, guys. Well, thank you guys both very much for your time. Kevin and Roy, I think this was both insightful, interesting. I think it was, I think from the judging by the questions, not just interesting for me, but it seems that everybody was really enthused and interested in what you were saying. So thank you guys very much for your time. Always enjoy talking to both of you. For everybody listening, as I've seen people drop off, but we are going to be sending out a recording of this, and if Roy and Kevin are interested, we can put their contact information as well. There were a lot of questions that I didn't get answered, but again, a lot of them were specific to specific people. Even questions about how BuzzBuzzHome's logo came to be. Feel free to message one of us with those questions direct. I think, again, I've known Roy and Kevin for a long time, and both very great open people. So thank you guys very much. Really appreciate your time, and have a great day.
Great to be here.
Thank you.